Most people have seen a lion, a tiger, or a bear. Far fewer have seen what happens when the boundaries between those species collapse entirely. Nature and science have produced animals that carry the DNA of multiple species simultaneously. Creatures that should not exist yet do. These are 15 of the most scary hybrid animals on Earth. Number 15. The Liger. Most people who saw Napoleon Dynamite assumed the Liger was exactly what it looked like on screen, a teenage boy's fantasy scribbled into a notebook. Scientists, meanwhile, had already been studying living ones for decades. The Liger is the product of a male lion mating with a female tiger, and unlike most entries on this list, it is not rare. Zoos and private sanctuaries around the world have produced them, and they remain the most well-known large cat hybrid in existence. The average adult liger weighs somewhere between 800 and 1,200 pounds. The largest on record, a male named Hercules living at the Myrtle Beach Safari in South Carolina, weighed over 900 pounds and stood more than 4 feet tall at the shoulder, nearly twice the size of the largest wild lion ever recorded. He is recognized by the Guinness World Records as the largest living cat on Earth. But size, in this case, is not a gift. It is a sentence. Ligers suffer from a constellation of health problems directly caused by their abnormal scale. Their hearts strain to pump blood across a body that was never designed to exist. Their joints degrade early under the constant pressure of that weight. Many develop neurological disorders. The average lifespan of a liger in captivity is significantly shorter than either of its parent species, with most dying well before the age of 15, compared to the 25 years a lion or tiger might reach under proper care. There is one biological footnote that surprises almost everyone. Female ligers are fertile. They can mate with lions, tigers, or even other ligers, producing a second-generation hybrid. A female liger bred with a male lion produces what is called a liliger. Bred with a male tiger, she produces a litigon. These second-generation animals are extraordinarily rare and carry a genetic complexity that researchers are still working to fully understand. The liger's existence raises a question that runs through almost every hybrid on this list. Not whether science can create something, but whether it should. And the further down this list we go, the more complicated that question becomes. Number 14. The Jaglion. If the Liger represents what happens when two of Africa's great cats are combined, the Jaglion represents something even more unlikely. The merging of two apex predators from entirely separate continents, animals that would never share the same jungle, the same savanna, or the same hemisphere in any natural world. A Jaglion is the offspring of a male jaguar and a female lion. Both animals sit at the absolute top of their respective food chains. The jaguar is the most powerful big cat in the Americas, capable of crushing the skulls of caimans with a single bite, a feat no other cat can match. The lion is the dominant social predator of the African savanna, a species whose roar can be heard 5 miles away. Combining their genetics produces something that carries the stealth and raw jaw strength of the jaguar alongside the muscular bulk and social confidence of the lion. The most famous Jaglions in documented history came from the Bear Creek Animal Sanctuary in Ontario, Canada. A black jaguar named Diablo had been housed with a lioness named Lena, and their resulting twins, named Jazara and Tsunami, were not the product of a planned experiment, they were an accident. The sanctuary had not anticipated the pairing, and the birth of the twins in 2006 surprised everyone involved. What made Jazara and Tsunami immediately striking was their appearance. Both carried the jaguar's distinctive rosette spotting across their bodies, but the rosettes appeared on a background coat that shifted between golden and dark. Tsunami carried a visible mane, unusual even for a hybrid at that age, while Jazara was darker and more jaguar-like in her facial structure. Caretakers described the two as completely inseparable, a bond likely rooted in the fact that neither animal would ever be accepted by either parent species. That is a recurring truth in the world of big cat hybrids. As for danger, caretakers at Bear Creek noted early that both Jazara and Tsunami retained the jaguar's instinctive habit of stalking before approaching, a behavior that the lioness mother never displayed. Turning your back on an animal with a jaguar's ambush instincts, even one raised around humans, is never advisable. Number 13. The Growler bear. The Growler bear is what happens when the planet's climate shifts far enough that two species, which evolved in completely separate ecosystems across thousands of years of separation, suddenly find themselves sharing the same territory. A Growler bear, sometimes called a pizzly, is the offspring of a grizzly bear and a polar bear. The first confirmed specimen was shot by a hunter named Jim Martell in the Canadian Arctic in 2006. The animal looked wrong from the moment it was spotted. It had the white or cream-colored fur associated with polar bears, but patches of brown marked its face and flanks, and its back was humped. Its claws were long and curved. DNA analysis confirmed what the physical evidence already suggested. This was a genuine first-generation hybrid, its mother a polar bear, its father a grizzly. The mechanism behind the encounter is straightforward and grim. Polar bears depend on Arctic sea ice as a hunting platform, using it to stalk seals near breathing holes. As sea ice retreats earlier each spring and returns later each autumn, polar bears are spending more time on land, moving farther south in search of food. Grizzlies, meanwhile, have been expanding their range northward as temperatures in their traditional territories rise. The two species are being pushed into the same spaces by the same force. What researchers discovered in the years following that first confirmed specimen was that the hybridization was not a single, isolated event. A 2017 study documented 4 hybrid offspring born to a single female polar bear and a male grizzly. Those offspring then bred back with grizzlies, producing what geneticists call backcross hybrids, animals carrying predominantly grizzly DNA with a measurable polar bear component. The hybridization was already deepening across generations. Growler bears appear to be fertile in both sexes, unlike many hybrids. This has led some conservation biologists to raise a concern that goes beyond novelty. If interbreeding between the two species continues to accelerate, the polar bear genome could gradually be absorbed into the far larger grizzly population. In a worst-case scenario, the polar bear as a genetically distinct species could be diluted out of existence without a single animal being directly killed. Others have suggested the opposite interpretation, that the Growler bear may represent an adaptive response to a warming world, a hybrid form capable of surviving in the ambiguous ecological space between the Arctic and the subarctic. Number 12. The Zonkey. The name Zonkey might sound genuinely funny when you pronounce it, but do not let the name fool you into thinking it is simple. A zonkey is what results when a zebra and a donkey successfully mate, and because both animals belong to the equine family and carry a broadly compatible chromosome structure, the pairing is biologically achievable. It is not common in the wild. The behavioral and geographic barriers between zebras and donkeys make spontaneous encounters unlikely. But in controlled environments, zonkeys have been produced more than once. The resulting animal carries a visual signature that is immediately recognizable. The body color is typically donkey gray or brown pulled from the donkey parent, but the legs are crossed with the zebra's black and white striping. The face often shows faint striping around the muzzle and forehead. The overall effect is of an animal that appears to have been assembled from 2 different species' spare parts, which is biologically not far from the truth. This is a phenomenon geneticists call incomplete dominance. Behaviorally, zonkeys tend to be calmer than their zebra parent and sturdier than their donkey parent, inheriting what appears to be the donkey's placid temperament while retaining the zebra's physical robustness. They are sure-footed on rough terrain and have been used in some parts of Africa and South America as working animals. The one limitation, and this applies to nearly every equine hybrid, including mules, is infertility. Number 11. The Koiwolf. If the zonkey is a curiosity, the Koiwolf is something far more consequential. It is not a laboratory creation. It is an evolutionary event, one unfolding in real time in cities and suburbs in the forests of the northeastern United States. A Koiwolf is the product of interbreeding between coyotes and wolves, with a significant admixture of domestic dog DNA woven in across generations. The hybrid has been present in North America for nearly a century, but its population has exploded in recent decades, and it is now one of the most ecologically significant predators in eastern North America, a region that had no apex canid predator at all for over 100 years. The story of how the Koiwolf came to exist is inseparable from the story of what humans did to the wolf. Wolves were systematically exterminated from most of the northeastern United States by the mid-1800s. By the early 20th century, their numbers around the Great Lakes had collapsed to historic lows. Coyotes, expanding eastward from their original western range, encountered the remnant wolf populations in that region. With few wolves left to breed with and coyotes moving through, the two species interbred. The result was an animal carrying wolf DNA that gave it size, pack hunting ability, and the capacity to take down large prey, layered on top of the coyote's extraordinary adaptability and tolerance for human-dominated landscapes. Roland Kayes, an ecologist at North Carolina State University, estimated in 2015 that koi wolves may number in the millions across eastern North America. They have colonized every major northeastern city, and they eat about anything that comes their way. Another thing that separates the koi wolf from most hybrids is its genetic stability. It breeds freely, producing fertile offspring generation after generation. It has filled an ecological vacuum that humans created by removing the wolf, and it shows no signs of stopping. An apex predator, born from catastrophe, thriving in the ruins. Number 10. The Taigon. The contrast between the Taigon and the Liger tells you something important about how genetics works. A Taigon is the offspring of a male tiger and a female lion, which makes it the exact gender-reversed counterpart of the Liger. Where the Liger grows to monstrous proportions due to an unchecked paternal growth gene, the Taigon experiences the opposite effect. The female lion contributes a growth-suppressing gene, and in the absence of the tiger's matching suppressor, that gene dominates. Taigons are typically smaller than either parent, often reaching only 300 to 400 pounds compared to the lion's average of 450. They are compact, dense, and muscular, with a physical build that looks simultaneously undersized and overdeveloped. What they lack in size, they more than compensate for in appearance. A Taigon carries the tiger's stripes across its body, but the coat beneath those stripes is the pale gold of a lion. Males develop a mane shorter and less full than a lion's, but present and distinctive. The face is spotted in a pattern inherited from both parents simultaneously, giving it a ghostly, layered look, unlike any wild cat on Earth. The first documented successful breeding and raising of a Taigon to adulthood occurred at the Munich Hellebrunn Zoo in 1943. Since then, Taigons have appeared in a small number of facilities worldwide, but they remain significantly rarer than Ligers. Part of the reason is practical. Male tigers are deeply solitary animals, and housing one with a lioness in conditions that allow natural mating carries significant risk to both animals and to the humans managing them. Most Taigons are sterile. A handful of exceptions, fertile females capable of producing offspring, have been documented, but they are rare enough that each confirmed case has been treated as a significant research finding. One such Taigon, a female named Noelle at the Shambhala Preserve in California, successfully produced a cub with a male lion in the 1970s, making her one of the only confirmed fertile Taigon females on record. Number 9. The spider goat. Everything up to this point has involved animals combining through some version of natural biological processes. The spider goat is something categorically different. It is the product of direct genetic engineering, the insertion of a foreign gene from one species into the genome of another in a laboratory. And what makes it genuinely extraordinary is not the strangeness of the pairing. It is what the resulting animal can produce. Researchers at the University of Utah extracted the gene responsible for silk production in the golden orb weaver spider, one of the strongest naturally occurring materials on Earth. With a tensile strength comparable to high-grade steel at a fraction of the weight, and inserted it into the genome of a domestic goat. The modified goats were then bred, and when the females lactated, their milk contained the proteins needed to produce spider silk. Spider silk in bulk quantity has been one of biotechnology's most stubborn targets for decades. The problem is spiders. Spiders are territorial and cannibalistic. You cannot farm them the way you farm silkworms. A facility full of spiders would destroy itself. The goats solve that problem. The silk proteins are extracted from the milk through a relatively straightforward filtration process, then spun into usable threads. The resulting material, sometimes called biosteel, has been explored for use in bulletproof vests, surgical sutures, parachute cords, and artificial ligaments. The goats themselves are indistinguishable from ordinary goats in every observable way. They behave the same, eat the same, and look the same. The only difference is invisible. written into the DNA of every cell in their bodies, expressing itself only when the females begin to lactate. Number 8. The Hinny. Some hybrids exist simply because biology has no issues with it, and the world is slightly stranger for it. The Hinny is one of those. A Hinny is produced when a male horse mates with a female donkey. This makes it the precise inverse of a mule, which comes from a male donkey and a female horse. The distinction sounds trivial, but it produces meaningfully different animals. And the reason comes down to a principle called maternal influence. The idea that the mother's body size and hormonal environment during gestation shapes the developing offspring in ways that genetics alone does not determine. Because the Hinny's mother is a donkey, which is considerably smaller than a horse, the Hinny is born smaller than a mule despite having the same parent species in different roles. It is compact, fine-boned, and lighter on its feet than its better-known cousin. Its head leans more equine than the mule's, and its mane is typically fuller and more horse-like in texture. What the Hinny lacks in size, it partially compensates for in physical strength relative to its frame. Its legs are notably powerful, and it is a capable pack animal in mountainous terrain where a larger mule might struggle for footing. The Hinny is significantly rarer than the mule, and the reason for this is partly behavioral. Male horses are considerably less inclined to mate with female donkeys than male donkeys are to mate with female horses. The behavioral barriers are harder to overcome in the Hinny direction, which means deliberate breeding programs require more effort for a smaller return. Like all equine hybrids, the Hinny is sterile. Number 7. The Beefalo. While some hybrids exist because scientists were curious, some exist because of hunger, the appetite of a growing nation, and the agricultural imperative to feed it. A Beefalo is the hybrid offspring of a domestic cattle and an American bison, and its history is longer and stranger than most people realize. The first documented accidental crossing occurred in 1749, recorded in South Carolina, when free-ranging cattle and wild bison shared territory along the frontier. But it was not until the mid-19th century, as settlers pushed west and the demand for hardy livestock that could survive brutal winters began to overwhelm the supply of traditional cattle, that intentional Beefalo breeding programs emerged. The bison's genetic contribution to the Beefalo is substantial. Bison are extraordinarily cold-resistant, capable of enduring temperatures that would kill conventional cattle. They forage more efficiently, requiring less supplemental feed across a winter season. They are disease-resistant in ways that domestic cattle are not, having evolved on the open plains without the shelter or veterinary intervention that domesticated breeds depend on. The Beefalo inherits much of this hardiness, but the commercial dimension of the hybrid goes beyond survival. Studies comparing Beefalo meat to conventional beef found that Beefalo produces leaner cuts with significantly lower fat and cholesterol content, while maintaining the flavor profile that the market demands. Unlike many hybrids, the Beefalo is fully fertile. Both males and females can reproduce, and the breed has stabilized to the point where it is now registered and traded commercially in the United States, Canada, and Australia. It is one of the very few human-engineered animal hybrids that has achieved what might genuinely be called domestication. Number 6. The Dizo. The Beefalo represents one version of utilitarian hybridization, a livestock animal engineered for a specific agricultural climate. The Dizo represents another version, one developed not in a laboratory or a commercial breeding program, but through centuries of practical necessity at altitude. A Dizo is the hybrid offspring of a yak and domestic cattle, and it is the dominant working animal of the Tibetan Plateau and the highlands of Mongolia. The name itself is Tibetan, and it refers specifically to the male hybrid. The female carries a separate name, Zomo, and unlike the male, she is fully fertile, capable of producing offspring with either parent species. The male Dio, like many male hybrids, is sterile. The yak's contribution to the Dizo is difficult to overstate. Yaks are among the most cold-adapted large mammals on Earth, capable of surviving at altitudes above 18,000 feet, where oxygen levels drop to roughly half of what exists at sea level. Their lungs are proportionally larger than those of domestic cattle. Their blood carries a higher concentration of red blood cells. Their thick outer coat, layered over dense underfur, maintains core body temperature in conditions that would kill a domestic cow within hours. The Dizo inherits a modified version of this physiological package in a body that is, crucially, larger than either parent. Neither a yak nor a domestic cow reaches the DZO's size at maturity. That size makes the DSCO the most capable beast of burden in the highlands, more powerful than either parent, more cold-tolerant than cattle, and more manageable in temperament than a full yak, which can be unpredictable and difficult to handle. Farmers across Tibet and Mongolia prize DZO meat as a delicacy, and Zomo milk is richer in fat content than standard cow's milk, making it particularly valuable in a high-altitude diet where caloric density matters. Number 5. The Holen. Everything discussed so far has involved land animals. The Holen is a reminder that the logic of hybridization extends into the ocean, and that the ocean produces its own versions of the unexpected. A Holen is the offspring of a false killer whale and a bottlenose dolphin. And to be clear with the name, because false killer whale is one of zoology's more misleading common names. The false killer whale is not a whale. It is the third largest member of the dolphin family, a deep-water cetacean that can reach 20 feet in length and 800 pounds. The confusion with actual killer whales comes from a superficially similar skull shape discovered in a 19th century fossil record. The living animal looks nothing like an orca. The first documented Holen appeared at Tokyo SeaWorld in 1981. The calf died after 200 days. The first Holen born in the United States arrived at Sea Life Park in Hawaii in 1985, a female named Kekaimalu, which translates from Hawaiian as "from the peaceful sea." She survived, thrived, and became the most studied Holen in history. Kekaimalu's physical characteristics split the difference between her parents in precise and measurable ways. A bottlenose dolphin carries 88 teeth. A false killer whale carries 44. Kekaimalu was born with 66, exactly the arithmetic mean of her parents' counts. Her body was darker than a bottlenose, longer and more powerfully built, with a rostrum that sat between the bottleноse's elongated beak and the false killer whale's rounded head. More remarkably, Kekaimalu proved fertile. She produced 3 calves over the course of her life at Sea Life Park. The first 2 did not survive beyond a few days. The third, a female born in 2004 to a bottlenose dolphin father, lived to approximately 9 years old. Holen fertility is rare enough in the documented record that Kekaimalu's case remains the primary evidence that the hybrid can produce viable offspring at all. Wild Holen have been reported on several occasions, with sightings documented in the waters around Hawaii. Whether these represent a genuinely emerging wild population or isolated encounters is still debated. What is clear is that the false killer whale and the bottlenose dolphin share enough of their range and social structure to encounter each other regularly, and that when they do, the biological barrier between them is lower than most people would assume. Number 4. The Cama. The pairing that produces a Cama, a cross between a male dromedary camel and a female llama, should not by any reasonable geographic logic be possible. Camels live in the deserts of Asia and northern Africa. Llamas live in the high Andes of South America. These two animals have been separated by an ocean for millions of years, and no version of natural history brings them into contact. But geneticists noticed something that geography obscured. Camels and llamas are, at the molecular level, close relatives. Both belong to the order Camelidae, a lineage that diverged from a common ancestor roughly 11 million years ago. Their chromosomes are compatible in ways that make hybridization biologically achievable, even if it requires considerable human intervention to make happen. The first Cama was born on January 14, 1998, at the Camel Reproduction Center in Dubai, produced through artificial insemination. The size difference between the two species, a dromedary can weigh over 1,000 pounds, while a llama tops out at around 400, made natural mating impossible. The result was an animal about the size of a llama at birth, but heavier and more solidly built. The Cama has a camel's short ears and a llama's soft, dense fiber coat. It lacks the camel's hump entirely. It has the llama's cloven hooves rather than the camel's padded feet. The purpose behind the creation was practical. Llamas are excellent fiber animals but relatively small and difficult to manage in large herds. Camels are large, cold-tolerant, and desert-adapted, but their fiber is coarser and their temperament notoriously difficult. The researchers at Dubai hoped the Cama would combine the llama's fleece quality and manageable temperament with the camel's size and climate resilience. Results have been mixed, as Camas tend to inherit a temperamental stubbornness from both parent species. The camel's legendary orneriness compounded by the llama's tendency to spit at anything it dislikes. By 2008, only 6 Camas had ever been produced. The program yielded more scientific data than commercially viable animals. Number 3. The Leopon. The Leopon is where the catalog of big cat hybrids reaches its most visually arresting point, and arguably its most improbable one. A Leopon is the offspring of a male leopard and a female lion. Like the Jaglion and the Liger, it is an animal that could never exist in any natural ecosystem because the species involved have never shared territory in any meaningful way. Leopards are found across sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia. Lions are native to Africa and a small remnant population in the Gir forest of India. Their ranges touch at the edges, but their behavioral profiles could not be more different. Leopards are solitary, secretive, and arboreal, known for hauling prey carcasses twice their own body weight up into trees to protect them from lions and hyenas. Lions are social, open-ground hunters that rely on pride dynamics to bring down large prey. Combine a leopard's spotted, muscle-dense body with a lion's broader skull and developing mane, and you get an animal that looks as if a painter ran out of reference material halfway through. The Leopon carries the lion's facial structure and jaw width, giving it a bite force that exceeds both parents, but the body is spotted in the leopard's pattern, with a coat that shifts between gold and amber depending on the light. Males develop a mane that is shorter than a lion's but present, framing a face that carries the leopard's slightly compressed, flat-browed intensity. The world's first documented Leopon was bred in India at the turn of the 20th century, during the period of British colonial rule when private menageries and exotic animal collections were fashionable among the wealthy. The animal lived in captivity and attracted considerable attention, but no systematic breeding followed. Over a century later, it is estimated that approximately 100 Leopons exist worldwide, a number small enough that any new birth is treated as a significant event. Every Leopon born enters the world already on the edge of rarity. The Leopon's physical profile raises an obvious question that researchers have occasionally entertained. In a purely hypothetical scenario, how would this animal perform as a predator? Whether that combination would translate into success in a real ecosystem is impossible to know, because no Leopon has ever lived outside human care. That hypothetical will never be tested. And for most species, sharing territory with such an animal, that is probably for the best. Number 2. The green sea slug. Every animal on this list has achieved its hybrid status by combining the DNA of 2 animals. The green sea slug, formerly named Elysia chlorotica, does something that should not be biologically possible at all. It steals the genes of a plant. Elysia chlorotica is a small marine mollusk, typically about an inch in length, found in the tidal marshes and salt creeks of the eastern United States. It grazes on filamentous algae, specifically a species called Vaucheria litorea. What makes the slug's relationship with this algae unlike any other animal-plant interaction documented in science is that the digestion does not end with nutrition. The slug extracts chloroplasts, the cellular structures responsible for photosynthesis, from the algae cells it consumes and stores them intact within its own digestive tissue. The chloroplasts continue to function inside the slug's body, converting sunlight into sugars for weeks, sometimes months after being incorporated. This process, called kleptoplasty, is not unique to Elysia chlorotica. A small number of other sea slug species practice a version of it. What makes Elysia chlorotica singular is what researchers at the University of South Florida confirmed in 2012. The slug does not just borrow chloroplasts. It has incorporated the algal genes needed to maintain and repair those chloroplasts directly into its own genome. These are plant genes, now permanently encoded in an animal's DNA, passed down from generation to generation. The result is an animal that is, at the cellular level, simultaneously a mollusk and a photosynthetic organism. It can survive for months on sunlight alone without eating, as long as it has access to adequate light. Its body turns a vivid emerald green, a coloration that serves as camouflage in the shallow tidal environments it inhabits, but that also reflects the chlorophyll operating inside its tissues. Elysia chlorotica is the only complex multicellular animal in which horizontal gene transfer from another kingdom, the plant kingdom, has been confirmed and verified. It represents a category of biological possibility that most evolutionary theory did not anticipate. Not a hybrid of 2 animals, a hybrid of an animal and a plant, written in DNA across thousands of generations, invisible to the naked eye, hiding in the green shallows. Number 1. The Koidog. The final entry on this list does not have the visual spectacle of the Leopon, the ecological weight of the Koiwolf, or the molecular strangeness of the green sea slug. What it has is something more unsettling, a direct line into human history, and a biological complexity that makes it simultaneously familiar and deeply unpredictable. The Koidog, sometimes spelled Koidog, is the hybrid offspring of a domestic dog and a coyote. Genetically, the pairing is close. Dogs and coyotes share a common ancestor and can interbreed without laboratory intervention. Their offspring are fertile, so this particular hybrid is ancient. The Thoidai Hokan people of North America are believed to have deliberately bred Koi dogs for centuries, selecting for a specific combination of traits. The dog's loyalty and trainability layered over the coyote's endurance, alertness, and territorial aggression. The goal was a guardian animal, something that could bond with humans deeply enough to be trusted, but that retained enough of its wild parents' instincts to be genuinely feared by anything approaching the camp perimeter. The result of that selective pressure is an animal that lives in a permanent tension between two behavioral systems. The Koi dog can inherit a compressed aggression response while wearing the physical appearance and behavioral surface of a large domestic dog. That combination is precisely what makes documented Koi dog attacks on humans and other animals particularly difficult to anticipate or prevent. German Shepherd and Coyote crosses have been flagged by animal behaviorists as especially unpredictable. The Shepherd's size and bite force combined with the Coyote's reactive aggression in a body that looks, from a distance, like a large family dog. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more fascinating stories.